Okay, we are in the Mishnah Brura. We are starting Simin Reish Nun Aleph with the Mishnah Brura. We already had a few sessions on it where we learned the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, and the commentaries. We learned the Aruch HaShulchan, the Lavush. We're just going to go through the Mishnah Brura straight, see exactly where that takes us. The Shulchan Aruch says, "Ha'isem alocha berev Shabbos min hamincha l'mala eino ro yisim min bracha." Someone who does work on the eve of Shabbos from Mincha and onwards will not see a sign of blessing. The obvious question is, what is this referring to? Which mincha are we referring to? The Shulchan Aruch continues and says, Yesh Mefarshim. Some explain that this is referring to mincha gedola. Some explain that this is referring to mincha gedola, whereas others explain that this is referring to mincha ketana, which, as we know, are at the different times. Mincha gedola is going to be around 12:30 on a perfect day. And Mincha Ketana is going to be around 9.5 hours on a perfect day, so that's going to be 3:30. So before we continue, let's take a look and let's start going through these Mishnah Bruras. Uprakmatya Shari. Business is permissible to do the whole Erev Shabbos. Umikol makom mashmi gemara disman segiros hachanuyos likoidim zman halakas aneirus. Nevertheless, it's implied from the Gemara that the time to close the stores is a little bit before you light the candles. See the Ber Halacha. See later on Ulakaiman Siman Rishon and Vav in the Mishnah Berurah Sivkot and Aleph. So this pragmati is actually going to be subject to a major discussion. Why it would be permissible? How does that make sense? First of all, you have a Ber Halacha over here that says if you're doing work, the Ber Halacha says something which is a little peculiar since we learned the Taz. V'isura nami isbazeh she'ino chamir iser kishar yisiri shvus shahayachayev al ze makas mardus. There's a prohibition involved with working on Erev Shabbos as well. Now, the prohibition won't be as stringent like other actual rabbinic prohibitions that you would get lashed for if you wouldn't do. That's what the Rambam says, that the Smag says, the Or Zarua, Venirishim Makoidu, Hu Mahad Psachim, the source is the Gemara Psachim, in the parak Makom Shinahagu, and Dafnun, Ayin Sham Gemara, Teretushim, Filu. Okay, fine. Now, the Ber Halacha goes into this a little more, and then I think at the end of the Ber Halacha, yeah. So the Ber Halacha over here on the next page is going to acknowledge the Taz. The Taz, which we already learned to, says, what are you talking about? Working on Erev Shabbos isn't a prohibition. Working on Erev Shabbos is more like, see right over here. He says, "Im be'etzura." He says, there's no prohibition with working on Erev Shabbos. Rak te'im b'simin bracha. It's just that you won't see the sign of blessing. You won't see the bracha. So, in other words, according to the Ber Halacha, there is a prohibition, albeit not such a great one. Whereas according to the Taz, it's just you're not going to see a bracha, but there wouldn't necessarily be a prohibition per se. So that's an important idea over here. And then there's another actually very important point of this Ber Halacha. When the Mishnah Brura said the source of this is really the Magen Avram, which we learned a few sessions ago on this. This is a very cryptic idea. When the Magen Avram says that business is permissible, that's not included in work. So the Ber Halacha is like, what are you talking about? Business is work. Last time I checked, and therefore they disagree with this Magen Avram. The Prima Gadim have different explanations behind this Magen Avram, but just be aware of the fact that this is actually not so straightforward and cut and dry over here. He goes into, by the way, this was brought up about blowing the shofar to remind people to stop working. Um, the idea is that the whole business situation is really not so simple at all. That it would in fact be permissible, and now it's completely permissible, and then no problem at all. So that's something to point out. And then at the end of the Ber Halacha, he says, "V'ine ha'olam nahagu lahakel linyan sagirus hachanuis v'nim shchol l'divrei taz leis be'yisur b'chol gavne." A lot of people are lenient. It could be they're relying on the Taz. There wouldn't be a prohibition. You just wouldn't see the sign of the bracha, the blessing over there. All right. So this is the Mishnah Berurah over here. Let's just finish this Mishnah Berurah on Beis. You won't see a sign of bracha ma'oisa malacha. From that work that you just did, you won't see a sign of bracha. But from other work, you certainly would see a sign of bracha that you did not on Erev Shabbos in the time when you weren't supposed to. Sha'af, that even Continue, sheyarviach b'makom zeh, yafsid makom acher. Even though you're going to gain profit from the work that you're doing on Erev Shabbos, nevertheless, you're going to lose it in another place. In other words, you could have an unexpected um, car trouble, and you'll have to pay for that, etc. Those types of bills. Mincha Gedola. Some explain that it's Mincha Gedola. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hainu b'sheishu mecha. This is from 6 halachic hours and into the day. Umincha Ketana, Hainu teishu mecha. The definition of Mincha Ketana is 9.5 halachic hours into the day. V'asoymech al mikin lo hifsid. Important point. Someone who relies on those who are lenient will not lose out. AKA, if we're going to rely now on those who learn that this prohibition of work is only after Mincha Kitana, which is 9 halachic hours of the day, so then that individual would not lose out. We've done this before. I just want to do it again because we're learning it. What exactly is the time of Mincha Kitana? So this week's parsha is Balak. And if we look on the chart, it says right over here. Okay, 5:20. That's Mincha Katana. So we're talking about a difference from 138 versus 5:20, which is a
Wow, that's
tremendous difference.
yeah,
What?
yeah, 4 hours
Yeah,
almost.
tremendous difference. So look, if you're going to rely on those who are lenient, you don't lose out. Vashal seems manios, as we just saw. It's not exact hours. It's shows manios. So that's what we're showing over here, which means we calculate the day from
Mm.
sunrise to from Amar Shachar, Alos Shachar, from dawn till Seisach Chavim, when 3 stars come out, divide that by 12. That's your halachic hour. Multiply that by 9.5, and you get the Zman of Mincha Ketana. Or you can calculate from sunrise to sunset, Hanitzach Chama to Shkia, divide that by 12. Two ways of doing it. B'kol zeh ba'oisem malacha atzma. This is talking about if you're doing the work yourself. Aval poel haniskar eitzel bal habayis bestam. But let's say you have a employee who is hired by his employer in an unspecified manner. Isa b'choshen mishvat simin shin lamed alf says in choshen mishvat simin shin lamed alf the zmano hu samach l'shkiyas hachama. The time to work is until sunset. Rak kadei sheyelech lebeso l'malei osloi chavis mayim v'litzlos bo dag hotum lahad l'gloas in air. Yes, have enough time to go back home, fill up a barrel of water bottle, and to roast a small fish, cook small fish, and to light the candle. Unless there's a set custom to that was stipulated beforehand, you're going to end. So this is the idea of there being more leeway for a employee. Now, there's actually a very important point on this, which I think, yeah, the we're going to see the Sha'ar Tzion is going to bring it up in a moment. The I am a Magen Avram b'Sefer Tosefet Shabbos. Look at the Magen Avram in the Tosefet Shabbos. Look at this Sha'ar Tzion over here in Daled. The Sha'ar Tzion in Daled, he starts off a little boring. He's just quoting some sources and stuff. But then later on, he gets a little spicy over here. And he says in the highlighted section, Aval nira dekol ze b'diavad sheniskar liyoim stama. This idea of it being permissible for the employee, this blanket heter over here, you should know this is talking about b'diavad, post facto. He was hired for one day. Aval lichatchila mutul al polo shel liskor es atzmo l'yom shalom b'erev Shabbos. Ki im adzman mincha katana. Lichatchila, preferably, it's placed upon this worker not to hire himself out for a full day on Erev Shabbos, except till the time of Mincha Ketana. So, David, this Sha'ar Tzion's for you. I know you brought this up last time,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes. But all right, so, just say that the scenario is it's like he's a private contractor or no?
he's an employee.
He's an
So,
employee, yeah.
the employee should have a conversation with his employer
Mm.
and
It'd be
say,
nice.
listen,
I mean, no, it'd be
listen,
nice for
boss,
work
there's
like that.
something called Shabbos, and I got to stop by Mincha Katana. It changes in the winter, it gets earlier. You're gonna have the conversation with them anyways, because they know that you're not gonna be able to stay as late on Friday.
Yeah.
So, set the boundaries. Tell him you'll take a decrease in pay slightly if needed, which he probably won't say if he's nice, because it's for religious reasons. Tell him, you'll do more work on Sunday or something if it needs to get done, or you'll stay later other days, you'll come earlier later days, and that's it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's all.
No, but interesting. You're finishing something with other people, and it's you're going to go past Mincha Gedolah. So you're going to go past.
Well, you
You have
have a
oth-
het there anyways until Mincha Katana, which we
you
just saw.
you have coworkers who you're working with, and then you just take off. You're in the middle of a project, and you take off. There's going to be maybe it could be a little resentment or something like
Okay,
if
well,
you.
you have to tell them you'll make it up for them. Usually
Well,
with coworkers, there's time to make things up, to cover for people, to help other people,
yeah,
you know? So it's a kind of they'll scratch your back, I'll scratch yours later
yeah.
situation. So that's this point over here. Nicely said by the Chafetz Chaim. The Ramah goes in and he differentiates between the type of work. The Ramah said this is talking about if you're doing malacha that's derech keva, it's a set manner. Avalim oisos or derech harai, if it's temporary, lefi sha'ah, v'loy kova alea shari. If it's temporary and it's not set, that's permissible. V'lochein mutter lichtov yiger a shleim kol tzigoyitz beze. That you're allowed to write this type of like letter, something similar to that. The Mishnah Berurah says, Hainu afilu b'schar. If it's temporary work, even if you're getting paid, that will in fact be permissible.
Right. I mean, what's the is temporary? Like, I was passed by a barber shop in town, and they said that they closed at an earlier time and had a packed store way past that time. So does that mean that work post quote unquote close time is temporary?
Okay, okay, two things. Number one, we're going to be getting to in a few moments specifically about haircuts. That's going to be coming up right over here. Number two is that we have to define temporary, and this is why just learning the Mishnah Berurah is not enough. We're going to see how the Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah exactly defines as temporary. We have to see that. So we'll come back to that question. There's long bear halachas over here. The bear halacha in Yesh Mefarsh Mincha Ketana says, look at the Magen Avram who agrees with this opinion. And we call Makom Mashma Minei the Poyal Isod Srich Lishus Mincha Gedolah. If you're working in a field, you need to already stop from Mincha Gedolah. And it's explained based on a Rambam to Kiri Shona Shemarabe Zal Plam Shivasikum Malachosin Kibashabas Sartachlis Ben Mincha Vidim Azvenu Lagu Kaka. ואפשר דהתם הלא כדי שיבואו לעיר ויכינו צורכי שבס ובנינו כל אחד מהפועלים אנשי בייס המכינים צורכי שבס. Nowadays we don't have this custom to stop by Mincha Gedola, working in the field, whatever. And the reason is because usually the preparations of Shabbos are prepared anyways by other people, by people's wives and the like. So that's the idea. But then he says, even so, Mikom Makom Yirish Mayim Yir Lissus Melchas B'Shad Al Kopanim Mincha Ketana. Someone who fears heaven should at least try to stop working from the time of Mincha Ketana. Unless it's a Davar Ovid. Unless if you stopping to work, you're going to be losing money, then you could continue. Rab Machmir Racham Choshe B'Bayis. Many are stringent even with doing work in the house itself. That's Sif Alf. Let's go straight to Sif Beis. L'sakin begodav v'kelev v'sorach Shabbos. If someone is gonna fix his clothing over here and his vessels, and it's for the needs of Shabbos over here. You know what? I actually don't want to leave anyone hanging over here with the what's considered RI. I'm gonna open up right now to the Oz V'Hadar. See what they say before we start the next sif. Why not get clarity while we're learning the how they say the exact definition of RI. Keva is you do it in a set way, they said. If you're doing temporary just for an hour and you didn't do it set, meaning it just happened occasionally, they said, that's permissible to do. That's how they define temporary. It's not something that was premeditated and pre-planned. They say over here in the footnote Yod Aleph, Keva means it's going to take a lot of time. That's a simple explanation based on the Or Zarua. As opposed to Harai, it's a quick activity, a quick task. However, according to the Shulchan Aruch Rav, it depends if you set yourself to be involved with it or if it just happened to you. Did you think about it beforehand? So that's the two different approaches as to what Kev is and what Arai is. Good? Yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Shia?
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Help from me also, thank you. That comes along Civ base. Well, fixing your clothing for the needs of Shabbos. It's permissible the whole day. Vuadin, same thing, the clothing of your friends if you're not getting paid. If you're not getting paid. Comes along the mission of Brew and Hay. Vina noitil, vimu ani if you're poor. She'in lo ma yoichel shar, you don't have what to eat, it's permissible. Like we learned at the end of Siman Tavkuf Membeis regarding Chol HaMoed, the same halacha applies with all of these malachas that are permissible on Erev Pesach and on Chol HaMoed, it's permissible on Erev Shabbos. Bafilu yesh lechem rak u sorach l'sarchi Shabbos ango basar v'dogim u mashkin tovim. Even if you have bread, but you need to work to be able to afford meat and fish and other beverages. Gam king yishleim b'deshari. That would also, in fact, be permissible. Avabalav hachi, but without this, yesh li zohir bazeh me'oid. You got to be very careful with this over here. Ki mashrim makama poiskim d'malvadin royusim en brocha yesh chashash isser bazeh. Without this, you got to be very careful because it's implied for many poskim that besides for the fact that you won't see a blessing, there's a concern that this will in fact be prohibited. So we have over here a statement saying, really, you could work to afford meat and fish. But you got to be careful because this is the Chavetz Chaim L'Shitasoi. Number one, you won't see the blessing, but number two, there might be a prohibition attached to it. Taz didn't go like that. Pri Megadim Be'er Halacha before it did. So you have to be careful with this idea over here. The Be'er Halacha over here says this doesn't just apply with fixing your clothing, it talks about sewing your clothing as well. Even though it's a malacha gemura, even though it's full-fledged work, which on Erev Pesach would be prohibited. Regarding Erev Shabbos, it would in fact be permissible. Umashme devreim batfilu for ma'isa uman mutter birga heven makor al din tikum magad machal moed desham mutter rak ma'isa hed you mash daisu the gam kan kinhu shar chroinim le mashme kin. There's a machloikis when we say that sewing is allowed. What does that mean, sewing? Could that mean even a professional way, or just a regular what a commoner could do? Just an argument about that. Machloikis over there. That's the idea over here. The end of the next Be'er Halacha says you shouldn't work until like right before Shabbos, unless you're really in a pressing situation. Important point. Let's talk about haircuts now. Four haircuts rather. Let's talk about Sfarim. If you're writing Sfarim to yourself, that's fine. You can't get paid for it. Mishnah Berurah Vav L'chein Yizar Gamkin Koisiv Sefer Tilin Mezuzos. Here, this is what it's saying. Even if you're writing Even if you're a sofer, you're writing Sefer Torah Tefillin Mezuzahs. Don't write it to get paid. Unless someone needs the mezuzah, the Sefer Torah, the tefillin rather. Or if he's financially pressed. Other than that, a sofrim, they should be closing their shop. The Ramah says, "Misap umistaprim kol yom filu misapar." You could get haircuts the entire day, even if the barber is Jewish. The Ramah will end up saying, even if he's Jewish. The Yesh Adam Amai Ksas B'Limudo, fine, and then he says the person should decrease the amount that he learns on Erev Shabbos. Hainu Afilo, this means even if, by the way, the Be'er Halacha quotes the Vilna Gaon, who says, whenever he goes into it, but Hainu Afilu Ima Sapar Notol Schar, even if he's getting paid, Ba'atam Denir Lakol Shoisa Hamis Taper L'Sorach Shabbos L'Chein Chari. Everyone sees that the haircut's being given for Shabbos. Therefore, it's permissible. Don't compare this to fixing clothing, which would be prohibited if you're getting paid. Tehasam a nikar pe'ula shehula soirach Shabbos masha inkim bazeh. Don't compare this to fixing the clothing if you were getting paid, which would be prohibited. Over there, you're doing an act. And it's not recognizable that the act is being done in honor of Shabbos Mashen Kim Bazeh. Conversely, over here with the haircuts, it's evident that it's being done for Shabbos, therefore it's permissible. Therefore, the Jewish barber needs to be careful not to give a haircut to someone who isn't Jewish, because it wouldn't be recognizable that it's being done in honor of Shabbos, because it's not being done in honor of Shabbos, because he's not Jewish. Kosam Magan Avram Sharizal Hayanizar Shulgalech Mincha Fil Shabbos. That Rizal was careful not to get a haircut, or it seems like even shave after Mincha, even on Erev Shabbos. Ubiru Kavanah. So they explain the intention of that Rizal. The Masha Kosav after Mincha and Achar Shigiyaz Ma Mincha Valoy Marish is Pal Mincha. Talking about after the time that Mincha approached, not that he already davened Mincha. Vahainu Dekamar Filu Berev Shabbos. That's why it says even Erev Shabbos goes without saying. During the week, that Rizal wouldn't get a haircut before, once the time of Mincha came in before he davened. Elafilu sorech Shabbos mitzvah, rather, even for the needs of Shabbos, which in and of itself is a mitzvah. Kamkin lo haya megaleach acher shegiya zman mincha v'lo yispal. Rather, even for the needs of Shabbos, which is a mitzvah, you wouldn't get a haircut after the time of Mincha came in and he didn't daven. Even on Erev Shabbos. Va'olam she'ina nohagin bazeh afilu acher shegiya zman mincha tani yishol medikiv shekorim dveit zakesh l'chol shinin shavor el dezes zman tefillah. The reason is why a lot of people are not careful with this, even after the time of Mincha Katana comes in, is because since they make a call and they remind everyone, go to shul to daven, there's no concern that now you're going to miss the time to daven. So we're going to see there are other reasons why it's permissible to get haircuts the entire day as well. But this is the idea over here. The Sharat Zion and Osches goes into this whole haircut business more. This is one reason why it's permissible to get haircuts the entire day. We're going to see other reasons. But it's an interesting shout out that Mishnah Bril before for a sofer and above. See if we can wrap this up over here. We got 4.5 minutes till we get kicked out of the Zoom. The person should learn less on Erev Shabbos so that he could prepare for the needs of Shabbos. Mishnah Berurah says, you have other people who are preparing the needs of Shabbos for you, spouse, cleaning help, whatever it is, servants. Kol shukein im heichin b'yom chamishi b'vada yuchel l'mukadarko. It certainly applies if you're already prepared from Thursday. You can learn according to how you want. Umi kol makom sarich l'sakein is a davar kavod Shabbos. Nevertheless, you need to fix something for in honor of Shabbos. Even if you have a lot of servants. 3 points to say over here. Number one, when it says over here that if you prepared everything from Thursday, you don't need to prepare on Friday. Look, preferably you shouldn't be preparing on Thursday. You should be doing it out of Shabbos, as we learned before. Another point, you should still do something yourself, even if other people are doing it. We learned that in Siman Reish Nun. Very important point. And then the third point is we're going to see as we continue, others say, like, what are you talking about? That you should decrease your learning. Um, it's going to be brought down that if other people, all right, are going to be working until right before Shabbos and utilizing all their moments to work, so then certainly a person could learn. We're going to allow the working. So we're going to be learning more about this. We're going to be seeing more reasons. Well, it'll be permissible to work, but we do see if a person is able to decrease what he's doing, then he should do so and not work if it's possible. Depends on the person's job and whatever he does. I'm actually pretty fortunate because our whole family is we don't really work at all Erev Shabbos, just like our setup. We don't have the question is housework and everything like that. But anyways, any questions, comments on anything that we did today?
Hmm. No, no, it's all right.
No? Yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward. The bare halachas are very long. I think the bare halachas that we did are a good summary of pretty much all of the major points that the Bear Halacha discusses. It's really that's the reason why it takes up 2 pages in the Mishnah Berurah. It's because of the Bear Halacha. The whole Mishnah Berurah itself would certainly fit on 1 page because the Bear Halacha is so big. But I think that's a good summary. Yeah, just we have what do we have? A minute and a half remaining. Just share one Bear Hativ then, if we have time. The Bear Hativ in Hey. Said learning in yeshiva is called something that doesn't have a set amount. That could be a problem unless you're doing just like Rashi with Shnai Mikra V'Echad Targum. And then there's another Ber Hetiv where he says, if you're not gonna be able to buy any food after davening, you could even buy before davening. We already saw all this, so it's repetitious. Truth of the matter is, we already saw this. So okay. So Mitzvah Hashem, next time we will continue and see some practical relevant points which the contemporary rabbis teach us about this. All right. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Let's go.
Welcome to you.